So here's my vanilla bean, and I need to kind of like get it off the wall somehow. So ooh gosh, ooh gosh, ooh, ooh, ooh. Hey guys! So today I put my vanilla bean orchid onto this lovely bamboo backed moss pole from a pretty dodgy pole that I made just with a stick. I also chopped him in half, and so now I have 2 strands of vanilla bean. And as an added bonus, while doing that, I went into detail about the time I got my hand full of sea urchin spines, because you guys seemed interested to hear about that on Instagram, so I thought I would tell a story while I did some plant maintenance. So let's go! Okay, so about 2 years ago we were in Hawaii, and as you do when you're in Hawaii, we decided that we would go scuba diving. We both have our scuba diving tickets, and seemed like a pretty good thing to do at the time. Fair call, I reckon. Anyway, we go out in the boat. It's really, really touristy compared to any diving we've done before. We usually just go with like club dives, where it's just kind of people diving for fun, but this was like they were taking photos the whole time. It was really weird for us because it was so different than what we're used to. And there was just one other American couple on the dive trip with us, and then you have like a dive leader, who's usually a dive master is what they're called, and they have a higher level of certification than like say we do. Anywho, there's another guy who I guess is kind of being the photographer, and we're stopping for photos, and they're doing things like putting octopus on our hands, which, well, you don't like touch stuff when you're diving in Australia, so that was a bit weird as well. So we get to this one point, and it's got like this really low rock shelf, I guess, and I think I must have been one of the last people to go over it. I don't think I was dead last, but he's like motioning at me like, go lower, go lower. And like in diving, it's not like, oh, you can suddenly just change direction. Generally you have to change your buoyancy. So I used my hands to go down a bit lower, like a bit of a swimming motion, I guess you would say. And didn't really register anything had happened until like I looked at my left hand, and there were just all these spines sticking the whole way through my hand pretty much. And I sort of turned around, and my husband was like a bit further away from me, I guess. He wasn't right next to me, and so I like swim over to him, and obviously you can't talk, so I just hold out my hand like and you can see him like go, oh my gosh. So he goes and grabs the dive leader, and you can like audibly hear him groan underneath the surface, which like if you make enough noise you can hear people, but I guess it's not that easy to hear people under the water like that. So then he's like motioning at us, and we think he's motioning at us to try and like pull them out. So we're trying to pull them out, and he's like, no, 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 no. And then eventually he just grabs my hand and just physically starts snapping off all the spines just everywhere. Of course you can imagine, like in my head I'm like, oh my gosh, what is he doing? Like that's like, aren't we meant to like get them out? On any dive you also have to do what's called a safety stop which is on the way back up. You have to stop to try and like off gas. It's not like integral, but it's kind of common practice just so that it's automatic, so you never accidentally forget when you should actually do it. So I thought maybe we wouldn't do it this time, considering like I have like a bajillion spines sticking all the way through my hand. But no, we still did it. So I'm hanging from like the anchor rope, just dangling there, holding my hand like this. And by this stage I am hyperventilating a little bit and panicking, because I'm thinking about, oh my gosh, they're gonna have to like cut my hand open, and how are they gonna get it all out, and like I'm meant to be going home soon, what's gonna happen? And so like my mask was full of snot at this point. I'll be honest with you, it was gross inside my mask. We surface, and they all help me out because of course they know that I'm in a bit of pain. And I get on the boat and they're all like, oh no, that sucks. But you know, like, oh, it's part and parcel of Hawaii. Apparently if you're here, you end up with sea urchin spines in you, because that's common or whatever. I'm like, oh, okay. Meanwhile, I'm trying still not to panic. Well, my hand was bleeding under the water. It had kind of stopped by then, I guess, but you could kind of see blood looks green underneath the water, so you can kind of see green clouds kind of floating up from my hand. So anyway, we're kind of like, so what should we do about this? And they're like, oh, you can kind of just leave it, like there's probably not really any point in going to hospital, you know. They would like want to like cut your hand open, and it's not really of any benefit because the sea urchin spines are actually graphite, so they're not going to cause your hand any issues if you just leave them there. So we were kind of like, oh, okay, right. So we get back to shore, and I think we might have had like maybe, I want to say 3 days before we had our flight home. Okay, so we go to a pharmacy and we grab some local anesthetic because that's what they told us to do. And I mean, I'd have to say it helped somewhat, but it wasn't like perfect. They say that like one sea urchin spine kind of feels like a single bee sting, and I had probably like, I want to say 15 that went all the way through, and then maybe like another 10 that were only partially through my hand. So it was pretty painful. It did ease when I took some oral painkillers, and I think I slept fine that night. But we were trying everything to try and get them out. We tried soaking my hand in vinegar, we tried soaking it in hot water. I stopped short of beating the heck out of my hand with a hammer like some people on YouTube have done. We'd hike and my hand would swell up to this like massive big red thing, like it was huge after we finished hiking for the day, and then I'd ice it to try and get it back to normal size. And oh man, it was a little bit insane. Wow, that root is like really stuck in there. It's a very nice looking root system. So fuzzy. Then we got back to Australia and I went and saw a doctor here because I was like, I just kind of want to know if I should be doing anything about this, or if I can kind of leave it and it won't be that big of a deal. And she was like, oh no, we should definitely like have a surgical consult. I'm gonna refer you to the hospital, blah blah blah. And I was like, yeah, I don't really want to do that though. Anyway, she would not take no for an answer, so she pretty much, like, I don't want to say forced, because it's not like it was like a bad thing or whatever. But she was pretty much like, you know, you don't have an option, I'm gonna send you to the hospital. And then like a couple of days, yeah, it must have been a couple of days later, and I had bought like that liquid band-aid stuff to kind of fill in the holes in my hand. I don't know how else you would say it, but there were like holes, right, where the spines went in and did not come back out again in some places, or went in and went the whole way through my hand. So I thought, oh, that's a great way for infection to get straight in there. So I was just liquid band-aiding those holes up, and there was one night where I was kind of trying to remove some of the liquid band-aid to put some fresh stuff on, and kind of like it's hard to describe, but I felt the whole spine move inside my finger, and so I just kind of got the tweezers and I started pulling on the liquid band-aid, because the spines are really brittle, so anytime you try and like pull on one, it just tends to snap instead of coming out. So I was actually pulling on the liquid band-aid, not the actual spine. Get in there! Anyway, I kind of chickened out after I'd started pulling it out, and I made my husband come over and finish pulling out the spine, but basically one of them just came clean out of my finger, and I was like, you know what, I don't need a surgeon, I am a surgeon. So I rang and I cancelled my appointment at the hospital. You can make of that what you will, but basically the spines they weren't going to go anywhere. They weren't going to cause any harm even if they stayed in there. So probably over the course of like, ooh, that was close. Don't do that, guys. That's a bad idea. Ooh. Got a piece of bamboo, much safer. Probably over the course of like a year to 2 years. Oh my gosh, that's not working very well. All of the spines ended up kind of working their way out of my hand anyway. Sometimes they'd kind of get really irritated, and I'd think that I could like pull it out, but the problem is they kind of went like see-through over time. So when they were first in my hand, they were black as black could be, and you could see them sitting there. But then it probably only took 2 days and they went see-through, and you just couldn't tell where the spine was, and so I'd end up just digging this massive hole in my hand or my finger trying to get a piece of spine out. Oh, this is not gonna work. And all I'd end up doing was basically just causing a nice wound on my hand from where I dug at it, and no spine would come out. But I think over the course of a couple of years they gradually worked their way out, and I'm pretty sure they're all out now. I don't really get that flaring up where it kind of gets red and swollen and angry looking. So yeah, it was this hand. They're gone. So that is the story of how I got my hand full of sea urchin spines, and I guess consequently how I got some of them out at least. Most of the others worked their way out over time. And yeah, this is the, finishing up the moss pole. Good thing about vanilla bean orchids is so long as there's a couple aerial roots under the soil, you don't actually need to do any propagation with them. You can just chop them in half and stick them in the pot and they will grow as good as gold. So that's it for this time, guys. See you next time. Bye.